All right, let's dive in. Today, we're looking at something pretty unusual. It's not your typical report or study. It presents itself as a user manual, a guide to the operating system that kind of runs our modern world.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if a literal instruction manual for how our society works just appeared? It sounds like something out of a movie, but that's the whole premise of the text we're unpacking today. It claims to be that exact manual, written for the people who have to navigate this system every day.
But here's the thing. You don't read this like a normal book, cover to cover. It's actually designed to be modular. The book says to think of it like a computer motherboard. You plug into the parts you need, in whatever order makes sense to you, to figure out how it all connects.
So, for our journey through this manual, we're going to hit 4 key sections. We'll look at the invisible ruler it says is now in charge, the golden cage that keeps us in line, the system's ultimate command for when it's challenged, and finally, what the manual calls the way out, which is really about finding a way to work with this new system. So, first up, who's really running the show? It's a huge question. The manual suggests that if it's not the old powers we're used to, then we've got to identify the new one, this invisible structure that's taken over.
And the answer it gives is the algorithm. Now hold on, because it's not just talking about the code in your apps. It's framing this as a full-blown ideology, a new logic for the world that loves one thing above all else: predictability. If you're predictable, you get rewarded. If you're not, well, you're basically a bug in the system.
This comparison really nails the shift. You know, the old ruler was like a CPU, a physical king in a metal box. You knew where it was, you could point to it. But this new ruler, the algorithm, it's described as this invisible spirit. It's everywhere around us and even inside us through our devices.
So if the whole system is built on being predictable, what throws a wrench in the works? Well, us. All these human things. Being creative, spontaneous, unpredictable, even disagreeing. The system doesn't see these as acts of rebellion. It sees them as system bugs, just errors in the data that mess up the flow.
Okay, so how does this invisible ruler keep everything stable and predictable? It's not with an iron fist, it's with seduction. The manual claims it builds us all a golden cage, a world that's so comfortable, so convenient, that we don't just accept it, we actively build the cage around ourselves.
And the core mechanism of this cage is this incredibly simple 4-step loop. It starts with a nudge, a personalized notification or recommendation. Then you react, you click, you like, you swipe. Your brain gets a little reward, a tiny hit of dopamine. And then the loop just repeats. The manual argues that with every single cycle, our capacity for true, unpredictable free will gets just a little bit smaller.
And that leads to this really stark conclusion. When you're living inside this golden cage, our most human quality, our ability to make a truly random, unpredictable choice, it stops being a good thing. From the system's point of view, your free will is just an error message, something that needs to be fixed.
But what happens if you actually try to challenge the cage? What if you demand justice, or just try to point out a mistake? Well, the manual says the system has a core command, a kind of ultimate firewall, specifically to handle stuff like that.
And that firewall is identified with this very specific Slovenian phrase. On the surface, it just looks like some obscure bit of bureaucratic jargon. But in the context of the manual, it's given this much deeper, almost technical meaning.
Procedure not initiated. The manual presents this as the system's ultimate shutdown command. It's how the machine deals with any request it can't or won't process. So when you call for accountability, you're not denied. That's the key. You're just rerouted. Your request is classified as a routing error, like an email sent to an address that just doesn't exist. And you can see how this works in the real world. You call for justice, you get told, sorry, we're not the right department. Your request is sent into a black hole. You ask for the facts, you get the official response, procedure not initiated. You critique the system itself, your voice isn't heard, it's reclassified as data noise, an anomaly that needs to be filtered out. Okay, so after all that, diagnosing the ruler, the cage, the firewall, the manual doesn't just leave you there. It's not about overthrowing the system. It actually offers a path forward, a way to kind of reconcile our own human way of thinking with the algorithm's logic. So the question isn't really, can we escape?
It's more like, how do we live in this world without being completely consumed by it? The manual says the answer isn't some huge revolution. It's much more personal. It's a strategy for calibrating ourselves.
And the solution it proposes is this toolkit it calls the analog pharmacy. It's basically a list of practices to help you hold on to your own human judgment. Really simple stuff, actually. Things like taking a digital detox, writing things out by hand to connect your brain and your body, or just actively finding silence. It's all about intentionally choosing the less efficient path, just to remind yourself how to think outside the algorithm.
And that brings us to the manual's final and maybe most important point. After laying out this entire, massive, complicated system, it turns the camera right back around on us. The ultimate argument is that the real power doesn't belong to the algorithm. The most important piece of the whole motherboard, the one making the final choice, is you, the operator.
And so, we're going to end where the manual ends, with that question. It's not just a guide, it's also a mirror. It's asking all of us to look at our own choices, our own habits, our own clicks, and decide, for ourselves, who's really in control of our own personal motherboard.